Yeah.
Go. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and do it. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. A couple of housekeeping items real quick. If you aren't on mute, please do so for the courtesy of everybody here. We will be making a couple of sharing switches between the two of us as we go along. Please bear with us if we are slow with those transitions. Also, there will be a couple of short movies that'll be playing during the presentation. Again, apologies ahead of time if those movies slow down or don't work at all. If you have questions that you want to ask, throw them up in the chat during the course of the presentation. We'll try to answer them. Maybe if one of us is off mic during the presentation, but more than likely, we'll try to get to them at the end. Hector and I will hang around and answer questions. Also, we want this to be informal and fun for everybody. Be relaxed. We love working in AI. We want everybody here to take some inspiration from this. We're not here to talk about how Gen AI is going to replace designers. Our number one objective is to show people that designers are critical to using AI moving forward. In fact, probably more irreplaceable with the introduction of Gen AI. Hector and I have known each other for, I think, over 2 decades at this point. Cut our teeth in Chi-Town as designers. He still represents Chi-Town. I'm out on the West Coast now. He has the, I guess, good fortune in the past, the challenge, the opportunity of owning his own business for 15 years, was in the bike industry. And part of his background was the inspiration for the subject matter that we used for this project, the evolution of the e-mobility industry. Hector, on his part right now, focuses on industrial design, packaging, also apparel, soft goods development. You'll see that when he talks about that during his parts of the presentation. He does have 2 girls in the family, and he also has a third child as well, which he refers to as the genius kindergartner, also known as AI. I've been a designer as well for a couple of decades now. In my spare time, I try to do photography. It's more accidental than anything else. I've been looking at Gen AI for about 8 or 9 years now. Gave presentations during some design conferences as far back as 2015 about AI and its creative potential. And people looked at me like I had 2 heads. And now when I give it, people still look at me like I have 2 heads. I am both an outdoors, an animal lover, and also a lover of creative technology. I think that's probably what happens when you grow up and your father has 2 magazine subscriptions, one to National Geographic and one to Popular Science. I have led projects with a lot of very demanding corporations, to say the least, and taken a lot away from those experiences. A couple of initial thoughts to sort of lay some groundwork here. These are some items that in our experience, when we teach about using generative AI for design, that we find extremely important to keep in mind. If you move into this process and treat it, if everybody could keep on mute, that'd be great. If you move into this process and think of it as a superficial shortcut, you've really lost before you've even started, at least as we talk about using AI for really intense design purposes. You also want to treat it like a being. Design is emotive work. You'll want to interact with it. You'll need to interact with it as an equal collaborator. Also, one thing to remember, and I was guilty and I'm still guilty of this, is forgetting that AI programs are both your problem and your solution at the same time. It's unlike any tool that we've used before. You can't ask Word or Excel or SolidWorks or Sketch, I want to do this, and you're not doing it. What can I do to help you do what it is that I want you to do. Help me help you. That is something that a lot of times you'll forget. And that if it doesn't do something, just try to go about it with a different way. Designers are also exquisitely prepared to make the most of Gen AI, maybe more so than any other domain and field out there. We have the empathetic skills. You need them to do quality design work. AI is the only tool out there where your proficiency is going to be measured by your intelligence of emotion rather than your technical ability. To get better with it is a psychological effort. We also want to impart people here with information and experiences that allows you to control your professional futures. You will see that people can use Gen AI and they can start doing superficial tasks relatively easy. But to do best practice design methods, you have to have the experience in the field. It's not going to work. And you'll see some examples that prove that out. And we just want to give that information so that you all can make informed decisions about where you want to go in your career. How much do you want to use Gen AI? We want to give people that information. And if people decide, you know what, I only want to use it a little bit, or I'm just really not interested in it at all, that's fine. We just want you to have the information to make informed decisions about your futures. Downhill versus uphill thinking. It's nice to keep in mind as you go through the process, the AI by default takes the most logical routes. And this is a place where your intuition as a designer really is necessary, because AI is going to always go with the most logical, most analytical. It's going to go downhill. Humans, your intuition as designers, let you know when I want to go uphill. I want to make that big swing because something in my background is telling me the logical way to go here isn't the big opportunity. Let's go with some uphill thinking. And then finally, the magic of generative AI applies to both using it as a tool and then designing for Gen AI. For those of you that are UX designers here, you're probably familiar with what we would call the affordance trigger response process. And that is to get people onto the happy path or the golden path, right? If you think of the affordance as the door handle, it's visually communicating to you that you need to do something there. The trigger is you pull or twist whatever the door handle or the knob. And then the response is you open the door. There's something on the other side of the door. AI is different than anything that's come before, because even though every single time you go through the process, the handle may be the same, the trigger, the action may be the same. What's on the other side of that door is never going to be exactly the same thing. That's one of the most frustrating parts of AI, but it's also the magic of using it. Some of the objectives that we have with this project is we want to demonstrate actual substantial use cases for it, not just writing out your emails or little marketing copy. We also want to show the true value of generative AI. It's not replication. It is differentiation of thought. There's a lot of companies out there that talk about innovation, right? But it's within the constraints of groupthink and business jargon. AI, just by its nature, requires you to think differently, and it ignores groupthink. It ignores human biases. To a certain degree, it's also a reflection of human biases, but it also thinks differently in ways that humans don't. We wanted to be able to show and identify major touch points where human interaction, and especially design experience, is absolutely critical. We want to identify the Gen AI areas of strengths and weaknesses. And as the new tools come out, we see areas where it augments in ways that humans can't. We also see its weaknesses. We also set out to integrate best practice design methodologies with AI. We're not here to use it for perfunctory or superficial tasks. I am going to hand it over to my compadre now, and he will introduce the Wonder Project to you.
Awesome. Okay, so we want to introduce you guys to Wander. So a brand, it's about gear to wander beyond the known. And so like Greg mentioned, we when we went down this path, I have a lot of experience in the bike industry, and so a decade and a half, and so I wanted to do something in the bike industry because I'm so intimate with that category that it would allow me to vet everything that we did, right? So all the work that we were doing, I would be able to see like how accurate it is and how on target AI is. And so one thing to note too, as we go through this, everything here is very heavily AI driven. So we're talking name, taglines, all visuals, a lot of the choices, obviously with human guidance, of course. And so just keep that in mind as we go through this. And so this Wander brand, we worked on, we wanted to cover everything, right? So, the naming, the tagline, did an advertising campaign with it, right? It built to wander in the wind, built to wander new worlds, built to wander in wonder. Again, every image in here, all done with AI tools within Midjourney and with Photoshop's AI tools as well. And so there's a view of how that can look like. So AI tools, ChatGPT and Midjourney and others allowed us to define the visual design language, right? It helped us get to this point. Wander, I can read this quickly. At Wander, our design embodies the unbridled spirit of adventure, celebrating the freedom that every journey offers. With bold contrasts and dynamic elements, we capture the vibrant energy of exploration, while pathways and discovery symbols serve as a testament to the infinite horizons that await. It's a visual ode to those who dare to venture beyond the known. And all of that was helped out with ChatGPT, right? And so it helped us figure this out. We went down the path to define our color palette, our font choices, all with recommendations from AI tools. Once we defined that, then we were able to get to this point where we started developing product. We call this one the Wander thermal jacket. So this was a high visibility. So I'll step back quickly. Everything was informed by the user needs that Greg will touch on the build up to this, right? But everything we did, all the product design that I worked on was informed by the output that Greg's work gave me, right? So this was a high visibility, waterproof, front and rear pocket storage, and this is the types of things that even come up as a tool like this gives me ideas. We talked about actually with the AI information from the interviews and things that we did there, it gave us some idea of features that people would like, and obviously being seen out in the road and navigating out in the road is important. So, can we somehow get integrated turn signals, that are somehow playing into the material, right? So visualize that as well in there. Then, I thought this was a great name that popped up. I saw one of Greg's slides, but the Wander Weight, I had it as a lightweight jersey, but the Wander Weight jacket and jersey series. So I visualized 3 different options, from a long travel lightweight jacket that has a lot of the visual design language that we have going on, a long sleeve performance jersey for women, unisex lightweight waterproof jacket. Again, all of it utilizing the mood boards and the visual language that
we may have some technical difficulties.
Yeah, so looking at a whole apparel line, and these are the 3 we chose. Looked at a very substantial amount of them to get to these 3. This is the Endeavor e-helmet. So again, this was actually ranked pretty highly on the list of products that we wanted to get into based on the research that we did with the AI tools. And so LED turn signals pairing to a bike computer to obviously allow you to navigate, removable padded lining for comfort and even cold weather riding. This would be the turn signals here, high vis logos. And then I thought this was one of those really sort of serendipitous moments that happen when you utilize AI. In one of the concepts that I did, it put these little spots here, these little details, right? And then that just sparked my thought of yeah, those could be radar sensors. Like Garmin has technology where where I ride that. When I ride bikes, it has a technology where it will a light will sensor when cars are coming up behind you, radar technology. And so I thought, yeah, that'd be great to introduce that. And again, that happens a lot when I work with AI tools. There's a lot of bouncing back and forth and building on it, just how it would happen with working with colleagues, right, of the non-AI kind. And then, you know, color changing, sort of night writing, glow in the dark type of paint would be great. Then we did this Wander Artist series. So, you know, again, flexing the capability that these tools have to visualize in high fidelity quickly, you know, looked at a few different options, right? The Wander Adventure series, that's you know, like an artist edition that's playing up on the mountain ranges and the visual elements that we have going on. You know, a Pathways edition, just again playing around with a more stealth version of that. You know, an Urban Explorer version, right? Just looking at different options that we can now visualize, you know, quickly. Then we did, you know, part of this too. It wasn't just hard goods; it was also digital, and, you know, of course, soft goods as well. And so then we did a Wander app and web. You know, so looking at a potential mobile app. You know, integrating, you know, obviously some of the work we did there to help visualize it. And then Greg will go into detail on this part, but this is much more than just pretty visuals, right? It is thought out, you know, the wireframes and the content in it, and everything has a purpose, right? That's one of the things that's going on here, is that everything's done with rationale, right? So you can see the website, you know, obviously different pages and on the mobile setup. And then we explored even interior, a retail showroom. So when we open up our first retail showroom for Wander, I've had a retail showroom for my bike company, and so when we get to this point, it could look like this, right? And so just even being able to visualize that, right? Like it just, you know, I looked at hundreds of interiors for a potential showroom, and you know, did a couple little just logo treatments just to tie it together. But you can see how, you know, it pulls in, you know, a lot of the imagery that we had, right? That's coming from the visual design language. Also looked at packaging, you know, like, oh, didn't change this, you know, but also looked at packaging, you know, just different, oh, sorry. You know, just how different treatments for how this can play out, right? Like, you know, just because, you know, we would have, you know, all these products that we're going to have. So how could that look, right? Like, can we have different, you know, different packages that all tie together? You know, okay, you know, of course it could just be one. If we built on this, we can obviously go off of one that we like better and just run with that. But this really, for me, what this does, it just really shows me the potential, right? Like what's possible. And so I think if I had to say too, like that is my takeaway with this whole part of it, and then I'll hand it back off to Greg now to get into the weeds here, is that all of this was the end result of a lot of prep work that we did. You know, like as Greg mentioned up front, like, you know, his work built a skeleton and I skinned it, right, with all of his visual elements. And this was just something that, you know, I showed this to my business partner in the bike company and yesterday, and his first thought was like, man, like, where was this like 10, 15 years ago? You know, because like the amount of things that you could just see, again, this was all done in days, right? Like we did all this in days. So you can just see the potential, like, of what's possible. And if anything, even just for inspiration purposes, to like rally the team, like it is incredible to me. So it's all right. So I will hand it back to Greg now.
A couple of items to sort of set up the project, and as Hector said, to sort of show you how the watch works. The toolkit that we use, one of the things that I think should be said is when we do this, these projects, there's a lot of tools and platforms out there, right? There's upgrades added every week. One of the things that we tell people is just ignore the noise. Not everything that you see on LinkedIn is really got a lot of solidity behind it or robustness. 75% of it is just perfunctory, superficial think pieces that aren't original. We spend 8 to 10 hours in Gen AI probably every single day, and we can't keep up with it. We have to change our courses on a weekly basis. A couple of weeks ago, I had to rewrite half of a course, and there's so many different pieces out there. There's no one that has really holistic solutions. So you have to kind of interconnect little individual pieces. It's like the old McDonald's Monopoly game, where you'd collect, but you had duplicates of pieces that other people didn't have, and I'll trade you an Illinois Avenue for an Indiana. What we try to do is rapidly give pressure tests to new updates, versions, and platforms using, I don't want to call it real life content. In a lot of cases, we do have work where we're able to pressure test things with real life content. But then we try to focus our efforts and say, oh, this didn't work for us, or it did work. Now let's focus our efforts on the areas that we want to actually be experts in. Just a quick movie here showing you the one of the plugins for Figma, which allows you to use ChatGPT right within Figma, answer questions, and then it will automatically input your response with the formatting that you have within the slides. This is a good way to make your process more efficiency. That's actually the Cube GPT plugin. One of the biggest things that we talk about is if you're a design exec, if you're a design manager, if you lead design teams, building the appropriate frameworks is absolutely essential. And we hear it from managers and directors as well. This is probably the most valuable information and takeaways that we give to them, at least. And to sort of set it up a little bit even more, as Hector mentioned, there's the skeleton to skin approach. We had sort of a 4-day timeline. Almost all of this work that you're going to see was done in that 4-day timeline. 90% of it, I would say, getting ready for this presentation of formatting took us both twice as long. We wanted to create a holistic experience. Another sort of disclaimer is the UX research that I'm showing here is not a replacement for deep, robust academic user research. Synthesis and heavy user research really right now is not one of the NLP's greatest strengths, mainly because the different types of data that it needs has to be clean. If you're talking about a massive amount of data, if it's not cleaned up, formatted properly, the LLMs are going to go off track really quickly. Also, in a lot of cases, they need internet connections to be able to apply formulas and formats. A lot of the guidelines and algorithms for the LLMs right now do not allow them to sort of go outside and bring in specific formulas. Also, one of the things that we also want to do is just really push the envelope of what we're doing. During the course of the next few slides, I'm going to reference this framework. This is a high-level look at the process that we use and the output that comes from the work that we do. This is really the biggest part of being productive using Gen AI for design within a team or an organization. What we have is we have this foundational framework. It includes best practice methodologies and then pre-engineered prompts. So we have this set up before we go into projects, which allows us to do this work in that compressed timeline. We select the best practice methodologies that comprehensively address the specific needs and projects of each program that we work on. And then as we move along, we tweak the individual methodologies or the pre-engineered prompts to optimize for new information or the identification of new opportunities. So as I move through this process, I'll bring you back to this every now and then to show you within context where we are within the process. The largest proprietary or unique methodology that we use when we do this work, we refer to as progressive feeding. If some of you are familiar with how AI engineers develop algorithms. Sometimes they call the training portion of them feeding time, right? And we sort of look at this as there's the ingredients, that's the previous output, the information that you're bringing into each step in the process. The recipe is your prompts. Your kitchen tools are the different Gen AI platforms that you use. And what it does is it's a sequential process where you're using that previously generated output to produce new output. So you see right here, if we have our user goals and our features, which has come from previously generated output, we'll combine those into a prompt. That'll give us our user tasks. Then we'll combine the tasks, the goals, and then also the features to create screens or user stories, then combine goals, tasks, stories into the screens. Screens are used for archetypes. Starting out the process, and again, this is, most of you are going to be familiar with this sort of generic design thinking type process: discovery, define, ideate, design. And I'm going to hit just upon a few of the more interesting areas as we go through this, starting within discovery. We're going to talk about personas a little bit, feature formulation, and also query quilting. A lot of people will use AI to develop personas, but they don't have a lot of richness. They don't have a lot of detail. A few things that you can do to make personas much more valuable is, first of all, base them upon ideal customer profiles. Just start with generic profiles and then develop a format for the personas that you want. So in this case, we're saying, all right, give us a few paragraphs on the description of this person, give personality characteristics, their job, their age, any demographics that you want, goals, needs, challenges. You can add as much depth to this in the formatting of your prompt as you could possibly imagine. And in this case, we're keeping it pretty simple. AI persona interviews are another area that's a really great usage of AI. So recently, Chat introduced their voice capability. Before that, you could use a Siri shortcut. And I will say from experience that using voice versus using a desktop and trading methods, there is a difference in output. If you ask the same question with the same prompt, the desktop version versus using voice, there will be a little bit of difference. You want to use the instructions like we do, put in personalities, and then have the personalities role play. One of the interesting things is that the personalities that you use as base for voice AI, and then within desktop, when you ask them to role play, those personalities that are the base still understand that they're role playing. They understand that they're acting. So you still have the base on top of the role playing. So what do AI personas give in terms of value to help you create baselines? They can use as gap fillers. I think everybody here probably knows that you start out with this idealistic utopian version. We're going to do all these interviews, and then a lot of them don't happen. And then sometimes the ones that do happen, your participants are not quite as forthcoming or delivering the substantial information that you want. They help you prepare for actual interviews by doing dry runs. You identify potential gaps in your questions. You can go back and ask them new questions. You can sometimes imbue them with a little too much personality. A lot of times what I do, you see here, I also ask AI, develop a conversational personality for this person. Then with a couple of the AI interviews I did for this, there was a little too much personality. Tina and Emily, I had to pull answers out of them. It was a struggle. And yeah, it mimicked real life, but I thought I could have been a little bit easier on myself here. Another sort of, I guess, added benefit is that you can use those personas, then that information to generate prompts from Midjourney within Chat, go over to Midjourney and create imagery for your personas that reflects them much more accurately than finding a stock photography. It also gives you a little bit more information on that person. You see their personas, you see their environments. Query quilting is one of the biggest methods that we teach. And query quilting at a high level is using different LLMs to answer the exact same prompt. There's two things that it really does. There's a lot of people here that I'm sure they're skeptical about the accuracy. You want to vet it. Well, you can go in and ask 5, 6 different platforms the same prompt, and you'll see, okay, I'm vetting my answer. It's also diversity. One of the things that I use is a program called Open Router. Open Router allows you to select different platforms off to the side. You can put in both 3.5 and versions, 4 versions of ChatGPT. You can use Claude, you can use Llama, Mythomax. Set them all up, ask them the exact same question prompt, and it's going to show you in real time all of the different answers for that exact same prompt. Again, this helps you vet. This helps give you a little bit more diversity as well. So what did that do in the course of this project? Well, if we look at query quilting as we used it to look at potential hardware products, you can see here, I call them the jelly rolls because that's what you make quilts out of, for 3.5, Mythomax, Claude, Llama as well. And the lists of the hardware products, none of them listed more than 24 as individual answers. But when you put the quilt together, there's 53 answers. So that quilt gave us that much more diversity. We went into feature formulation. The interesting thing here, AI does a really good job. We've got all of that hardware. We've got all of those options. How do we decide which ones to go forward with? Well, we sort of narrowed down the list here. We used Hector's background to sort of cheat a little bit, his domain knowledge. Then we looked at the desirability of the products to our measured against our ideal customer profiles. We put them into an impact effort matrix. How difficult will they be in the real world to technologically achieve versus what sort of impact? We'll cross-reference the desirability with the technical impact or the technical effort, the potential market impact, and then we'll rank them according to these are the customer personas that we want to prioritize. So we'll give them weight. And out of that comes a formulation. Here you can see the gloves with turn signals, rechargeable LED lights, smart helmets, smart goggles, high visibility jackets. This directly went into those products that Hector showed you. So those final designs, those products, they're based upon substantial information. Moving into define, again, showing where we're at in the framework, talking about designing and putting parameters around the digital experience here. I touched on the tasks, the goals, the mobile, user stories, architecture, task flow. That led into the screens that we would need for the website and app. And also an interesting thing that you can do is start to set up a visual design language. So what we'll do is we'll take those user personas, the information about them, their daily lives, the brands that they like, the brands that they surround themselves with, and their environments. We'll put that into chat and start generating a visual design language. Again, whatever sort of rules, parameters, formatting that you like for your visual design language, you can put it in your prompt. Here, we got an initial color palette. We got an initial typography format, and you'll see this come through later. Ideation. I'm not going to cover a lot of ideate methods here. I think most people here are familiar with the different brainstorming. It's one of the widely more publicized usages of AI. I am going to show real quick using Jambot, which is Figma's sort of Miro sidecar app to the Figma platform. They've recently imbued it with ChatGPT power, but then they've also sort of customized it in a Miro or design fashion. So it's really good for quick ideation. There's some interesting presets here. What I will say is it's weaker than the actual ChatGPT version. It's made for more superficial perfunctory answers, but it's good for brainstorming and ideation. Getting into the design aspect of this. So how does all of that work lead into the design? We'll take that information from the digital side, those user stories, those screens, that architecture, and we'll begin to create quick wireframes. I use Wireframe Designer here, which is a plugin for Figma. And as you can see, those app screens, which were developed according to stories, goals, and tasks, I can input the information for each screen, draft, and this is real time. This is how quickly it'll create a wireframe for each screen. These wireframes that it develops, they have responsive components already put in. They're layered. You can select them, move them around. Also wanted to show, sometimes it's really cool to be able to use just the native or original images that you'll get from Midjourney and use Photoshop Beta to expand them. So here on the left of each of the quadrants, you'll see the original Midjourney output. Then we use Photoshop Beta to extend it. Good for branding, good for developing backgrounds. So putting it all together here, as we're developing digital and physical product, we're inputting the design language, we're inputting those, for me at least, the wireframes, the original Midjourney concepts, and you can see how that adds up into, okay, we like this sort of city plus mountain background. It fit the dual markets that we're aiming for. We like the format of producing the helmet products here. And you can combine, merge the bitmaps with the wireframes pretty easily. You can use plugins like Image Tracer to turn the bitmaps into vectors if you want to make the process even quicker. I'm going to turn it back over to Hector now to talk a little bit about the design of the hardware side.
All right, so I thought I'd just lay out 7 different tips, things that I do when I'm designing that I think would be helpful and that I utilize quite a bit in this project. And so the first thing is leveraging the AI tool strengths. And so it's really important to just right from the get-go realize, like, what are these tools good at? In the case of Midjourney, which is what I'm working on here, it's speed. Obviously, it can generate things in seconds, and minutes. It's extremely high fidelity. It has a capability to be really high fidelity. And another part too that I really gravitate towards is that it's fearless, right? Like, it doesn't have emotion, right? So it will explore further and more to the edges than I think most of us can do, even those of us that are professional creatives, right? Because we all have, we've all been there. We have experience, right? That's telling us certain things can't be done. It doesn't think that way, right? And so when I say leverage those strengths, I'm talking about this, this ability to just look at so many options, right? And then utilize our abilities to then curate it. And so, taking hundreds of concepts, bringing my experience to the table and saying, okay, this is going to work, this isn't going to work, to get it to here, and then to continue refining, right? Like that, there's an approach I teach in my class. I call it dig for gold. And it's this idea that it's a very different, when I utilize AI tools, it's a very different approach than the approach I take when I do traditional non-AI work. And that lays out like this. When let's say somebody gives me a brief, right? All this skeleton work that Greg did, and then now I'm ready to develop some product. I'm going to sit down, create an ideation, maybe a brainstorm with some folks, and usually what happens in my experience is most people, because we're doing prompting in our brain, right? We're accessing our database, and so most people end up having ideas right away, right? Like, all right, there's the low-hanging fruit, right? And so let's kick off a 1-hour session. We're going to get some ideas out, and it's probably going to be pretty front-loaded, right? Like, typically it's what I've experienced. Most of the concepts will come out early, first half hour, and then it'll start sort of, sort of dwindling down the ideas, and then we'll start working and trying to figure out ways to spark more ideas, right? But it's usually front-loaded, and then it starts sort of settling. With AI, it's very different. That's why I call it digging for gold, because that initial stage you canvas, right? Like, you may not get a lot of these ideas up front. Like, you may not be able to figure it out, but it makes up for it in speed, right? And so it may take in that hour, the first half hour, to really sort of figure it out, and in this case, figure out the prompts. But when you figure it out, that's why I say dig for gold, because once you find it, once you canvas and you find it, you can go so deep so fast that you can look at, 50 versions of this one, right? And 50 of this one and 50 of this one. So after an hour, you will, I tend to have a lot more good ideas with AI tools. This second point is again another thing I teach, actually like at the core of what I teach, and in my Midjourney classes, and it is that you have to run it like a science experiment. Like that's the way I approach prompting, and what I mean by that is that it's a structured system that is not only set up to get results. Obviously, that's what we're after, but that more importantly, it's set up to give me a feedback loop. As Greg kind of mentioned earlier, like it's like talking to a being, right? Like in my work, I say it's talking to a kindergartner. And so when I'm talking to this kindergartner, we don't talk the same language. So I need to figure out how it talks it. And I use a method called, I call it image LCP. And it's and effectively, image model. I have my system, right? Image model, attributes, guidance, environment, lights, camera, parameters. And I tell people, like, this is my system. It works for me in product and graphic and interior design and things like that. But it actually doesn't matter if it's this system or another version of this, another order of this. What matters the most is that it's a structured setup, right? And again, that feedback loop. So I highly encourage that type of thinking when you approach this. The next big thing in my world, and it's again critical in my what I teach, right, is that communicating with images. And so this touches on what Greg mentioned earlier, this idea that us designers and us creatives, we are well poised to really benefit from tools like this, because we're trying to figure out a way to communicate to these tools. And in the case of Midjourney, like, it really loves visuals. Like, that is how it really understands things. And of course, happens to be what I understand, and I think a lot of us creatives understand. So it gives us a very distinct advantage, right? One, because we already live in this world, we already talk visuals, and then two, we can create visuals, right? And so communicating with images is critical. That's how a lot of this work was done. I could even just quickly show you here, right? Like, here's this, this I was working on some apparel here, and you can see, like, this was the image I used to feed it, to inspire it to do this, right? To give it the guidance to do this. And then if I were to go through here, you'll see that it's like a repeating pattern. I'm always using images to talk to it. And that's how I created this. That's how I created these retail showrooms inspired by this. I use this image to inspire all of these, right? Along with different prompts and different parameters and things like that. Another thing is that all these different features that a program like Midjourney keeps adding, I view them like tools, right? They're tools in our tool belt, right? And it's the key is to turn those tools and bundle them together in different processes so that you could tackle different jobs, right? Every job, something I teach in my third class, that every job is different. Like, that's what you'll find with this. Like, some jobs are really hard, jobs, aka projects, and some are easier, right? And so, but they all just need, if we can't figure it out, like Greg touched on before, it's on us to figure out a way around it, right? If it's not working with one process, then figure out another process, right? And so even here, you can kind of see how I went through here. I used, like I mentioned earlier, images to create these initial concepts. I use image references. I use this power words. It was what I call it. I used my image LCP method to get this. Once I got there, then I started doing my digging for gold, like I mentioned. I use a lot of the very strong, very subtle to get that. And then you notice here, like, this is not, this is like a dual cover here. So that's not going to work, a dual hoodie. So then I did a remix with a vary by region to replace that and put a person's head there. Then utilizing remix, zoom and pan to get some different views, right? So I'm using different tools based on what I'm trying to accomplish, right? And even though it's not very clear, that's part of the challenge with tools like these, is that it's not very clear that these tools, like, there is no tool that says, give me the front view, right? Like, you have to get very creative and you utilize certain tools to get you where you want to go, right? This other one is number 5 here is more efficiency is more value add that we can provide. So, I focus on a lot of the things I teach are just are the basics, right? So, there's obviously all the fancy moves and all the things that'll get you, really cool results. But at the core of it all is just the basics. And I think that's very often overlooked. Like people really overlooked it. Like I've taught probably over 100 people already in this tool, and almost nobody uses the image gallery. Like this is the image gallery. Like this is all the work, some of the work I've been doing. And this is the control panel. Like without, I would venture to say that if you're not using this right here, you're probably 15 to 20% less efficient than I am. Right. And that's just one tool. Then there's all these other, different tools that different things you can use in here to do, like I can run this prompt and just quickly show you guys. I know we're running short on time. But even little things like this, right? If I run this prompt and at the end of it, I put, this --R3, like it'll run 3 prompts for me. So it's just small little thing, right? But that allows me to, I could do up to 40 with my plan. So I could have looked at 40 of those options. And again, tiny little things, but those add up. The fact that I'm not having to type that in every time is how I'm able to do so much so fast, right? And then it leans into my ability to curate and to have a good eye and all those things, right? Which is this point, right? That guiding and curating with the tools. When I talk about this often, when we're using a tool like this, we're no longer the designer that's there putting the line down or moving the vector points. And once we're here, we are all now design directors, right? And so that's what I did here. Like here is, here's this guy, and then I put a helmet on him, and then I put a vest on him, like you saw it over there, and then I put some sunglasses on him, right? I didn't tell it what sunglasses exactly. I didn't tell it exactly how the vest, I can get it detailed, just realizing that the more specificity I have, the tougher it is, right? But I can, I've learned over time that it is trained on this collective of human experience, right? All this data that we've put up online, and so it can figure things out, right? Like there's trust that has to happen, right? And we'll run out of time, but it's great. You can I can look at 20 different vest options, different colors. I could look at jackets, which I did. I was actually looking at, jackets in here on this guy. I was look at all these different, I was looking at different options there, right? Different colors. And so you could just do so much so quickly, right? And then the last point is this, that I say this is that AI limits, the limits to what we can do with AI, I have found they're in our head. Like it definitely has limitations, right? But most of them, I would say, are in our head. And like I put this in because I thought it was funny when I was first trying to get it to figure out a name for us for the brand. Like it gave me a list, and then one of them right here is this Safe Tickle. And so then I remember I even asked it, like, what's the deal with Safe Tickle? And then it just gave me this funny response, and I just laughed at it. And so the reason I put that in there is because it's very easy to just look at that and just give up and say, you know what, this AI is dumb, right? And it's just not working. But it is working. Like I just need to give it I need to realize that there is a way around it. I just hadn't figured it out, right? And so once I figured it out, how to talk to it, like Greg obviously has a lot of expertise in talking to ChatGPT. Me, I'm more on the Midjourney side. But once I figured out how to talk to it, I'm like, oh, it can do a lot more than I thought. Like that limit was in my head, right? And so that's it, right? Like that. Just in closing, I know we're running out of time here, but I will say this, at least from what did I learn? Like me, and I think Greg, I'm sure, agrees on most of this, is that I have never been more inspired, and had more of a creative spark than I have been in this last year, right? Like it's like super powerful. Like the type of there's this, I've read it online, people saying like that, like on LinkedIn or on Facebook or wherever, where people are saying like, oh, this is going to just drain our creativity. Like that is like, could not be further from the truth in my experience. In my experience, like, this just leads to, if you're already creative, I cannot see a way that this does not make you more creative, like, at all. Like, it is just like, hands down, it would be like if you're sitting in a room with 10 other high-powered designers, like, what would that, you would up your game. Like, you would be so inspired by, or artists, right? Like, that is, so that even doing this project, I'm like super pumped about this, right? And just like what we can do. I mean, I want to build this company now almost, right? Yeah. And so then, and the other thing is, like, I find a new use case every week that touches on that point that I just mentioned before. Like, I just don't see certain things, right? Like, because we're conditioned to work in the process we work in, right? For 20 plus years, I've worked the way I've worked. And so now all of a sudden this tool is just upending everything. So you have to really suspend sort of your beliefs, right? To be able to do that. Again, I just touched on this already, that the designer is irreplaceable. I think we're at the center of it. Like, without us, this thing doesn't do anything, right? And so we're like critical to this thing. And then, Greg always talks about that it's fueled by, EQ, and I add to it, and it's powered by creativity, right? I think both of those things are very true. Like, it takes a lot of empathy to talk to these tools, right? And it takes a lot of creativity to guide it, right? A lot more than I have utilized probably in my last 20 years, and I've utilized quite a bit. And as I mentioned before, we're all design directors, and that became even more evident as I went through this. And Greg already touched on this, just the progress is like unprecedented in terms of what these tools are doing. So I always keep that in mind. Whatever it can do, I mentioned earlier, like, that there's ways to work around and figure out ways to get a different view. Like, that's coming, right? Probably this year. There's so much is coming. And so to me, is like really important to be on top of this, because a lot of these principles I'll apply. And I always just finish off with this, like, just have fun, right? Like, at the end of the day, when you're learning, and I mean that when you're learning one of these tools, as you're learning these tools, it's like playing, I always say, it's like playing guitar. Playing guitar when you first start is hard, right? And because your fingers hurt and you're not making good music, right? You're just making sounds, and they just don't sound good probably. And so when I learned to play guitar, they teach you this song, and for you guys who've taken the class, you've already heard this story, but they teach you this song called "A Horse with No Name." And they teach you that song because it's the easiest song to play. And I didn't realize it until I started teaching these Midjourney AI classes, is that they teach you that song because eventually it's so easy to play that you're very quickly making music, right? And it's the same principle here. Like, what you want to do is start making things, right? Without Greg and I got to the point we're at today, but we've been at this for a while. And so now we could utilize all these tools, right? But at the beginning, just pick something fun and tackle that for a while until you get used to it, because you want to keep picking up that guitar, right? And so just to close it off, right? So Greg and I both teach classes. We've taken all this, a lot of the things that we've learned, and we, we're both on this path where we I mean, I'll speak for myself. I highly believe that every creative out there should be dabbling with these tools, and I believe that to my core, right? And so, over time, I built classes, Greg did as well. And so we, both of us, we offer courses, right? Like I took classes, right, that you can take to learn these tools. In my case, Midjourney for creatives. And then in Greg's case, he teaches his whole process, Gen AI, UX, the UX UI design courses with everything he just talked about. And then we also do consulting, right? Like, we do, larger projects, right? Custom projects and explorations, like, obviously just traditional design work with AI enhanced, even just how do you get AI integrated into your company, right, into your organization. Like, that is a big challenge in and of itself. How do you put it in there the right way? How do you navigate that, right? There's a lot of stress there. And then workshops as well, like live workshops or online workshops. And so yes, here is how you get in touch with us. You can get in touch with Greg. His email, here's LinkedIn. Here's my email. Here's my website. You could It's called AI. Oh, there's that. There's my website. You can go in here and jump around if you would like. And then there's my LinkedIn as well. I have a newsletter, talk a lot about stuff, a lot of these things that Greg works on. I put his stuff in there as well. And of course, I have Black Friday stuff happening. So in case anybody's interested, it's all on the website. You can see it there. So that is it. That's what we got.
Yeah, if anybody has any more specific questions, throw them up into the chat. Again, thank you everybody for your time this morning. Thank you for listening to a couple of geeks ramble on for a while. We could probably fill your day with this stuff. We hope that it's inspiring. We hope that it's informative. As I mentioned, we just want to get the information out there, because if you're a designer, learning some of these things is what's going to give you the advantage over armchair designers, right? You have to have the experience. People can get up the Gen AI ramp pretty quick, but if you don't have the design experience, it's going to take you a couple of years, maybe 2 to 3 years to properly learn to use these tools. But if you've got that experience and you bring in some people like Hector or myself, or even take the time on your own, 2-3 months, you're going to be up to speed. I've seen Hector teach some people in his classes. A week or two later, they're already getting contracting gigs. So it's really effective. Again, thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
First off, really great presentation. Really appreciate all the information. I've been following you, Hector, for a while, and
Awesome.
yeah, it's been awesome watching you develop these and see your learning throughout the whole thing. I'm a digital product designer.
Cool.
I recently graduated, so I'm kind of like emerging into the space still. I'm wondering if you guys know of anyone else that is working with generative AI in like creative ways, but more focused in the digital space.
That's a little bit of my realm. Again, there's bits and pieces. There is not as many what I'll call like high profile LinkedIn people that really focus on the digital market as there is more of the hardware market. I think actually for me, if I'm going to look at who's doing what, I would probably recommend following companies and platforms right now more than anything else. So, you'll see, Figma is a good follow because of their new relationship with chat, and then the acquisition by Adobe. There are a few good people out there for UX design. If you DM me, I'll give you the links for those people. There is a community of people that are really trying to push the envelope with Gen AI. And, I don't feel great giving out individual names in a format like this, but if you DM me,
Yeah.
I'll certainly point you in the direction of other follows that would be good.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks again, Greg. Yeah, I'll look you up on LinkedIn, and yeah, appreciate it, guys. Have a good day.
Definitely. Then let me see. Was there any other questions?
I think we got them.
I think we're good. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you again, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great rest of your day, no matter where you're at.
Awesome. Thank you.